Hello, and welcome to the final webinar in our Calling for COP26 webinar series from the Future of Cooling programme. Today, I'm really delighted to have Tracey Crowe and Kate Hughes talking with us today. Kate is currently the Director of International Climate Change in the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. And she leads a team working on COP26 and the long-term global transition to net zero, including supporting clean energy transitions, green finance, sustainable supply chains, and increasing the uptake of electric vehicles. And Tracey is Chief of Staff and Senior Director of Internal Programs at Sustainable Energy for All. She has a diverse background in international relations, clean energy, carbon markets and communications, and she's worked for a variety of organisations within the climate and clean energy sectors. So we're really delighted to have them both with us today. First off, we're going to go to Tracey, who's going to talk about the cooling portfolio at SE for All. Thank you, Tracey.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. So let me just start by thanking Oxford University and the organizers for the opportunity to participate today. I also want to just pass on greetings from our CEO, Damilola Ogunbiyi, who's also the UN Secretary General's Special Representative for Sustainable Energy for All. Damilola would have liked to have been here to participate in this, and unfortunately, schedule just did not allow. So let me just give you a little bit of background on what we've been doing at Sustainable Energy for All. Our work on sustainable cooling began in 2017 with a focus on access to cooling and in putting equity at the heart of our approach to the problem. So very different at the time from what other organizations were focusing on. So we advocated for an approach that was broader than simply HFC phase down, although that's not simple, broader than energy efficiency, and made it about people and linking access to sustainable cooling to the development benefits that sustainable cooling provides across buildings, cities, agriculture, and the health sectors. So in order to demonstrate this, we worked with the Kigali Cooling Efficiency Program on a flagship report that came out in 2018. This was the first to quantify the size of the cooling access gaps and define a narrative that showed why delivering access to cooling is vital to the sustainable development agenda, to the sustainable development goals that are all due by 2030. So our work is grounded in the recognition that delivering access to cooling is really vital to achieving Sustainable Development Goal 7, which is access to affordable and reliable, sustainable and modern energy for all by 2030. How we deliver access to cooling will either slow down or speed up the delivery of modern electricity services to the hundreds of millions that lack it today. Now, in 2018, cooling consumed about 17% of global electricity demand. And that is a number that could triple by 2050 because cooling needs, of course, are only growing in a warming climate. It's also growing as economies develop and there's more income to focus on cooling. But with inefficient cooling solutions, we risk wasting new electricity generation capacity. We risk blackouts at periods of peak demand, and we certainly risk rising emissions. But with sustainable solutions, including those that work as standalone systems off-grid, we can help hundreds of millions of people realize the development benefits of electricity, including an economic opportunity, nutrition, and healthcare. So that approach has really grounded the work that we have done. And that includes the development of the Cooling for All Needs Assessment. This was released in 2019. And this approach laid the groundwork for the development of new knowledge and tools that promoted needs-driven approaches. This includes the recently launched model National Cooling Action Plan methodology from the Cool Coalition, which reflects the data and addresses the sectors that are necessary to deliver cooling for all. Today, the SE for All cooling team is hard at work with our partners to ensure this type of approach is delivered, including, for example, addressing agricultural cold chains in Indonesia's National Cooling Action Plan. Our Cooling for All team has also helped design, target, and grow the impact of new initiatives from the Global Cooling Prize to the Africa Center of Excellence for Sustainable Cold Chains to the Million Cool Roofs Challenge. Our team has really supported these initiatives with advice, communication support, technical assistance, and more. We've also worked with the Asian Development Bank. We worked with them to put cooling on the agenda, for example, at the Asia Clean Energy Summit year over year. We've also worked with the Cool Coalition, as I mentioned earlier, to ensure that it was recognized as a key initiative at the 2019 UN Secretary General's Climate Action Summit. We've also worked with development partners to not only raise awareness, but to really help mobilize finance for sustainable cooling. So we're really proud to have a long-standing collaboration with the World Bank ESMAT team on access to cooling. And in an important sign of progress, that World Bank team recently secured Green Climate Fund approval for their new cooling facility. And this will work to expand access to sustainable cooling solutions in 9 least developed countries. GCF financing of $157 million will leverage a further $720 million in financing, making this the largest amount of public finance dedicated to cooling yet. So that's a major development that has happened very recently. We've got a communications campaign called #ThisIsCool. So if you haven't seen it, certainly hope you look for it. And this has really supported increased awareness of cooling solutions that include passive cooling, policy, and service-based solutions. Through it all, the foundation of our work there has been on knowledge and data. In addition to filling key knowledge gaps on access to cooling, our Chilling Prospects research series has been published every year to update the global community on global access gaps, providing better and more detailed data every year. But that report also conveys a very important fact. As it was in 2018, there are still over 1 billion people globally who face immediate risk because they lack access to cooling. And this is not an issue of comfort. This is an issue of, in some cases, life and death, of having safe food to eat, of having vaccines for pandemics. Challenges associated with energy access and the COVID-19 pandemic slowed what was a positive trajectory, but much more really needs to be done at an accelerated pace if we are to deliver sustainable cooling for all. At SE for All, we're really happy to work with development partners, the private sector, universities, and governments to meet this objective, but we really need greater ambition from all partners across all sectors. And one key way that this ambition can be demonstrated is through energy compacts. Energy compacts are an opportunity for countries, for companies, for finance institutions, many other stakeholders to showcase trackable ambition and the intersection of cooling with other development priorities such as nutrition and agricultural cold chains. At SE for All, we were pleased to support the UN High-Level Dialogue on Energy. This took place in September, and our CEO, Demalola, as the special representative for the Secretary General, served as co-chair and global champion of the High-Level Dialogue. SE for All spearheaded these new energy compacts that were devised as a key outcome of the dialogue. So through our support and the support of UNDP and UNDESA and many others, more than $400 billion in finance and investment was put forward through over 160 energy compacts. And those, again, came in from governments, from companies, and many other stakeholders. This included an ambitious energy compact from the Cool Coalition, which included support to India and Rwanda on cold chains and to focus on generating new political commitments. But we certainly need to see more on cooling. And then in the run-up to COP26 and beyond, our work on cooling for all will continue. We'll continue to focus on new ambitious commitments, and that includes, underpinned by finance, technical assistance, communications, and policy support. So thank you again. Very happy to be here, very happy to be participating in this, and look forward to continuing over the next hour. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Tracey. I'd like to pass over to Kate.
Thank you very much from me too, and good morning and good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be. I think Canada, Cardiff and California popping up in the chat box while we were just waiting to start. And it's great to be here at this Future of Cooling programme at the University of Oxford, for inviting me to this event on cooling for climate action today. And as the finale event too, I think it's very exciting as you all turn your attention to COP26, and certainly my attention is getting increasingly focused on COP26 as well. And I'm really pleased that you're focusing on this as a topic, as I think it's one that brings together the challenges that we are facing, enabling growth and development, improving people's lives, and doing all of this in the face of climate change as well, but in a way which doesn't exacerbate that problem too. And as Tracey said, in a warming world, access to cooling equipment in already hot climates or regions where heat waves are going to become more commonplace is going to be essential to saving lives and guaranteeing a good quality of living. And we know that cooling demand is growing, most rapidly in developing countries. And SE for All tells us across 54 vulnerable countries, there's about just under 3.5 billion people facing cooling access challenges, with an additional 50 million people at high risk in 2021 alone. I mean, it's just kind of staggering, the numbers that we're talking about here, and this is often a topic which isn't addressed. But our work for COP26 is clear that addressing these challenges is really critical, and it's got to remain a top priority for the next decade if we're going to move towards net zero. And because we heard from Tracey too, kind of the growth in emissions that we're going to see from this area. So there's 3 areas of sustainable cooling that I just want to cover today. So first is about linking the cooling agenda to the work taking place at and around COP. Secondly, there's working internationally and as COP presidents to promote access to clean, efficient cooling to reduce indirect emissions from power consumption. And third, I want to touch on, tackling those direct emissions of HFC refrigerants used in cooling equipment, domestically and internationally as well. So let me kick off by just kind of relating some of this to the overall COP themes for COP26 that we're setting out, and will be what you'll be hearing a lot about through those 2 weeks in Glasgow as well. And cooling really links directly into each of the 4 priority themes that we're working on for COP this year. So mitigation, adaptation, finance and collaboration. So on mitigation, probably pretty obvious, but we're going to have to decarbonise the power generation systems used to run cooling equipment and ensure that the most efficient cooling technologies are being deployed across national and regional markets. The IEA predicts that there'll be 1 billion more air conditioners in circulation globally by 2030. And in refrigeration, not only are these household appliances one of the first that people seek to purchase as electricity becomes more accessible and affordable and incomes rise, but projected refrigerator stock in use in developing and emerging economies is expected to double from 1 billion today to nearly 2 billion by 2030. So it's really essential that we can champion the most efficient equipment to manage this projected growth in our electricity demand. On finance, we're going to have to promote financial assistance programs that provide developing countries with access to support where they need it. And I'm really pleased to say that the UK has provided over £28 million for cooling to date on innovation, R&D, and technical assistance programs across the world. This includes the £15 million Sustainable Cooling Innovation Fund in partnership with the IFC, and to accelerate the commercialisation of innovative sustainable cooling technologies in low and middle income countries. More broadly, UK financing for cooling at the larger scale also includes the £106 million Market Accelerator for Green Construction programme, which we do with the IFC, which is also about promoting energy efficient green building globally. We've also got programs like the Global Climate Partnership Fund, which supports local investments into energy efficiency and is rolling out for support for cooling as a service. On adaptation, of course, while we're accelerating our efforts towards net zero, we've also got to take really strong and robust action to ensure that communities, countries, citizens are resilient and well prepared to face the current and future challenges of warming. Sustainable, efficient cooling solutions that meet demand without further warming the planet is essential. And so let me just touch on collaboration too, because the scale of action required around cooling requires an immediate and global response. McKinsey estimates that a 2 to 4 degree rise in temperature would result in an 8 to 13% loss in GDP due to rising heat. And that's about $3 to $4.5 trillion. So no one can do this alone. This is about climate and energy. It's about the SDGs and development. It's about health and food systems and much more. So we know that international bodies must continue to do more to cooperate closely together, break down those silos if we're going to address this cooling challenge. So let me move on to kind of the next bit of this, which is what does product efficiency in particular at COP look like? And we want to use COP26 to raise international action on the important area of product efficiency. Most air conditioners and refrigerators are sold way beyond their technical potential for efficiency. And we must set the ambition to eliminate the least efficient products from the global market. And we need to achieve coordination across countries so that we can realise these benefits more quickly. And since the end of 2020, we've been working closely with the International Energy Agency on a call to action on product efficiency. And this has got two aims. So first of all, this call to action is about working with the IEA and our co-leads on the Super Efficient Equipment and Appliance Deployment Initiative, or SEED for short, to coordinate the regional and global marketplace for high efficiency products. And also through a reinvigorated SEED initiative, we want to set countries on that trajectory to double the efficiency of 4 key appliances by 2030. And those 4 products are lighting, electric motors, domestic refrigeration and air conditioners. And together those 4 account for over 40% of global electricity consumption. So one of the most effective ways to accelerate the pace of the clean energy transition is through enhanced international collaboration. And I'm pleased to say that the UK has encouraged membership from 6 new members really recently to join the 18 existing members of SEED. So we've got Colombia, Chile, Denmark, Ghana and Nigeria, highlighting our broad global partnerships. And thirdly, just briefly on F-gases. As HFC controls linking closely with those improvements to the efficiency of appliances. And the UK was one of the first countries in the world to ratify the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol, which will globally prevent up to 0.4 degrees of warming by 2100. And of course, if we can combine that phase down of HFCs with simultaneous energy efficiency improvements in the refrigeration and air conditioning sectors, we've got the potential to double the climate benefits, which is something we mustn't miss. So we're advocating for more ambitious action under the Montreal Protocol, and we're also using funding to support countries taking early action there as well. We're providing over $3 million to UNEP and the World Bank on projects to accelerate the climate benefits of Kigali phase down, and we hope to have further funding to announce very soon. So it's pretty clear, I think, that this is a huge topic, a huge agenda, which has got far-reaching benefits, but also challenges. And for me, it's only through that enhanced collaboration amongst policymakers, investors, businesses, civil society, and international institutions that we're going to really accelerate the pace of action around cooling that we need to see. I think we've taken really big strides over the last few years, and a huge thank you to SE for all the work that you're doing too in this area. But we know that there's a huge amount more that we need to do. And we're going to help, we're going to need your help, everyone on this call today, to maintain that momentum through COP and through the coming decade as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Kate. Just like to remind everyone, if you have a question for either Kate or Tracey, could you please put it in the ask a question function that you'll find at the bottom of the screen. So as chair today, I'm going to take that privilege and sort of start off the kick off with some questions that we would like to ask Tracey and Kate. My first question is, how could the issue of cooling at COP be a success? What specific progress on cooling at COP26 would signal that governments, industry and the finance sector are taking the challenges and many opportunities of acting on cooling seriously for both the climate and development agendas? Tracey, can I go to you first?
Happy to go first, and just to start out to say that I think we're really lucky that the UK has the COP presidency this year and has really come out with some ambition around this whole issue. SE for All has endorsed the UK government's call to action on product efficiency, so this is really great. And just to mention that the SEED initiative is something that's been around for many years, and really great to see that being reinvigorated. It's done a lot of good over the years, and still lots of potential there. So for us, I think we see two main challenges to address at COP. As I mentioned before, we've got a billion people living in poor rural and urban areas that are at high risk due to a lack of access to cooling. So we have to ensure that they have access to sustainable cooling solutions simply as a matter of equity. Second, we've got 2.3 billion that are at risk of accessing inefficient cooling. And Kate touched on this, but this is what could really lead to significant increase in energy demand and, of course, carbon emissions. I mentioned earlier that in 2018, cooling consumed 17% of global electricity demand. So without addressing this, electricity needed for cooling is going to triple by 2050, certainly jeopardizing our ability to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 7, but certainly jeopardizing any of our climate change goals as well. So for us, success at COP looks like this. NDC reviews are going on. We certainly want to see, and I think we need to see, cooling commitments in the NDCs. And this can provide, I think, a crucial roadmap for the next 5 years if we can have cooling commitments as part of the NDCs. We certainly want them to have a stronger political commitment. This includes commitments to work across energy, agriculture, and the health sector to really drive needs-driven approaches. We also would like to see manufacturers of cooling solutions join the race to zero to show that they're part of the solution, providing affordable and sustainable solutions for all. We want to see expanded access to finance. I mentioned the World Bank and the GCF earlier. That was a major development, but it's not enough. We certainly need more, and we need the private sector to support financial and technological innovation that delivers access to cooling, particularly for the most vulnerable. The GCF financing is certainly going to help. It has a focus on health and agriculture, where grants and concessional finance is really needed. But we need that firm commitment from the private sector to help deliver access to cooling to those that just don't have any options at the moment. And finally, while commitments are important, we need plans and we need action to achieve what those commitments are putting out there. I mentioned energy compacts earlier. The Cool Coalition submitted an ambitious energy compact in the high-level dialogue in September. At COP and beyond, governments, development partners, private sector, the finance community can all show that they will deliver on their plans by submitting an energy compact. And this is something that allows you to put in those concrete actions. So we've had various types of mechanisms over the years where we have commitments put forward. The energy compact is unique because it's unique to energy. It's unique because it not only asks for the commitments, but it asks for the concrete actions that will be taken to back up those commitments. And on an annual basis, we'll be tracking the progress of those actions over time. So again, we had the high-level dialogue in September. The push to get additional energy compacts continues. We would very much love to see cooling as a key component in the energy compacts, even for those companies, those countries, and other stakeholders that have already submitted energy compacts. These are living documents. So we have an opportunity to continue to update those with more commitments and more actions as we go along as well. So let me stop there and hand it over to Kate, I guess.
You were kind of, I think, halfway through the question, but I think I know what it was. And so rather annoyingly, actually, Tracey has, I think you've said most of what I was going to say too. I mean, in terms of COP, look, we're very, very clear for COP26 that one of the key things we want to do is to keep 1.5 alive. We know that we need to work with a huge range of countries and companies and finance institutions to make sure that we are really driving down emissions to limit global warming. So within that context, and as I said earlier too, obviously our goals for COP as well are about adaptation and resilience as well, and building that up in particularly our most vulnerable communities globally, of providing that finance and working together. So within that kind of broader context of what we want to see for COP and how cooling fits within that, very much agree with Tracey's point about actually we want to see countries mainstreaming cooling into their NDCs and their plans and their targets, and thinking about it in that way, given that we've already covered today just how huge it is as a driver for emissions growth as well. So, coming forward with commitments on sustainable cooling, and thinking about cooling solutions. We're very keen to see those coming through at COP, whether it's on sort of Energy Day or our Science and Innovation Day, or on any of the other days as well. The UK published a sustainable cooling guide in July last year, and that sets out some key opportunities for action that governments and businesses and cities can take. And we'd really recommend that people go and have a look at that as well. You can have a look at that on the UN Cool Coalition website if you haven't seen it already. And we are supporting acceleration of research, development and deployment too of innovative solutions on cooling that can particularly help to address the growing demand of this, linked to rapid urbanisation too. So I think seeing some progress and hearing people come through at COP26 and talking about how we really kind of accelerate that deployment is going to be key. And I mentioned this earlier too, the SEED initiative. So if there's any of people listening or know of people who should be signing up to this call to action, I would really encourage more people to come forward and to sign up to this. We've got a large number of signatories. We think there's going to be, this will be able to point to a real shift on commitments towards product efficiency as well. But please do sign up to that, because again, it's building that momentum and showing progress at COP that's going to be really important, and sending those signals to markets and investors as well.
Brilliant, thank you both. My next question, while there is much more talk of cooling in recent times, and in the context of rising extreme heat, cooling still remains a topic within the purview of specialists, and it is not firmly embedded in the climate and development discourse. Why do you think this is? How can we change it? And are there any examples that you've seen of governments treating cooling as a strategic development and security priority? Tracey, would you like to go first?
Sure. So I think this is similar to what SE4All has been doing on energy access, which is what I would call sounding the alarm, raising the issue, trying to help people, policymakers in particular, understand that you cannot address the climate emergency without addressing energy. You cannot achieve net zero by 2050 without achieving SDG 7 by 2030. And you certainly can't achieve net zero without addressing the cooling challenge, as we've heard already. So for us, it's energy access, energy transitions, and cooling all have to be integrated into the climate conversations. Not just as from a engineering or a specialist level, but at the highest levels, and not as an afterthought, but as a core and crucial part of addressing climate change. So for us in all of these conversations and the new commitments, in the negotiations, for us, people have to be at the heart of it. So for us, people, we talk about people and planet, and really, we can have a planet, but we still need the people to be able to thrive on the planet. For us, we're looking at development as well, and we want development to be considered in all of the discussions and all of the negotiations that take place. We have to include development aspirations of people around the world. So we cannot focus on climate at the detriment of development, of bringing people out of poverty, of providing better healthcare, gender equity, economic opportunity. But it's access to energy and it's sustainable cooling that are at the heart of that and can help provide that. So it's not an either or. It's for us, we see it as a win-win. We started the work on cooling by focusing on access to cooling, by focusing on it as an equity issue, and again, just putting people at the heart of everything. So some of the things just to highlight of what we've seen, I think really making some good progress. The integrating energy efficiency into the implementation of the Montreal Protocol was the first challenge. Integrating development objectives was yet another step that we had asked for. National cooling plans. That's a really big one that we are seeing more countries do. And I think it's important that those are high quality national cooling plans. India and China have both published national cooling plans with energy demand reduction targets. 8 other countries, including Rwanda, Ghana, and Sri Lanka, have demonstrated their leadership. They've published plans, and more are on the way. India, I think, is a country that we hold up as sort of the gold standard for having the model national cooling plan, and it goes beyond just efficiency. It does look at equity. It looks at agricultural cold chains as being a key thing. So that's really been good to see. One thing that, though, one thing we can challenge is we are at a different place today than we were a few years ago. Compared to 2015, when the Sustainable Development Goals originated, I would say that cooling has changed in that it is now firmly on the map of issues that will be addressed to achieve the Paris Agreement. So that is something. It has already come out of, I think, just being an issue of specialists and engineers and so forth. I think it's widely recognized now that cooling demand is growing. It will continue to grow. That cooling demand is certainly going to make it much more challenging to achieve energy transitions and net zero emissions if that demand isn't met with investments in clean power and sustainable cooling solutions. COVID-19 certainly raised the awareness of cooling because of the vaccines that require cold chains. Some of them requiring sub-zero cooling and cold chains to be delivered without those cold chains being broken. So this has really demonstrated that access to energy and sustainable vaccine cold chains, they are a serious issue of equity. And it's something that I think has really elevated this conversation to the ministers of health and energy. So it's become a cross-organizational, cross-ministry conversation as well.
Yeah, thank you. And I think you're not going to find us disagreeing about much on this in this conversation today. I think awareness raising has taken time, and it has felt like quite a niche area, cooling, for a long time. And yes, of quite probably kind of about the technical standards of particular products and their efficiency. But we know how important it is. If it's 10% of global emissions, then we need to do something about it. And that's why we're trying to put it in the spotlight. And as Tracey said, kind of raise that alarm bell as well for people to think about it in a different way and to see it as that much bigger more integrated issue that actually, isn't just about a product or a sort of a set of emissions, but actually something which is integral to how people are living their lives, to their health, to their prosperity, and to the environment. And I think that point about equity is hugely important here as well, and about kind of really being inclusive as we think about this sort of transition that we're all going to be going through. How do we do it in a way which is really equitable and inclusive? So we know it's about the buildings that we live in, it's about the food that we eat, about the vaccines, the healthcare that we get, about our transport and infrastructure and jobs all linked to that as well. And I think that's what's going to raise it up the agenda and make it much more of a strategic priority. And certainly I remember going to an event that we hosted a couple of years ago in COP where this was on the agenda, and just kind of leaving absolutely staggered as to what we were talking about here, and the potential to do lots more in the area of cooling. So we know that lots of countries have undertaken ambitious commitments over the last few years, and 127 countries have ratified the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol, which is about reducing our use of HFC refrigerants. So there's a huge amount going on there. The UK and other G7 members have endorsed the Biarritz Pledge for Fast Action on Efficient Cooling, and they did that in 2019, and pledged to pursue further action to enhance the climate benefits of the Montreal Protocol in the G7 leaders' statement as well from May this year. So there's a lot of kind of commitments. But we also know that countries are doing lots as well, those that are particularly at risk from cooling issues. And Tracey mentioned a number of them who are developing those action plans: Cuba and China, India, Rwanda, Trinidad and Tobago. And we know there's lots more in development as well. So, pay due credit to all of those countries for really making sure that it's on their radars, for working it through, and hopefully also giving us lots that other countries can learn from as well. And finally, I think just a shout out to the UN Cool Coalition. The UK is a member of this, which was established to advance and exchange knowledge and mobilise action on sustainable cooling as well. And it's that kind of real active learning communities across governments and industry and civil society organisations, which is going to be really important here too, to make sure that we are raising it up the agenda, talking about it, sharing good practice, and really finding those solutions too. Oh, you've both frozen for me. You probably lost me again.
We can hear you, don't worry. I'm just going to turn off your video because hopefully that might help your connection, but we can still hear you. My next question I'm going to take from the audience. There seems to be a general focus on delivering more efficient indoor space cooling. On the demand side, however, how much focus is there on tempering outdoor air temperatures in cities, such as through vegetation or high albedo paving, so aggregated electricity demand in cities from AC systems is reduced? So that's quite a long one. Kate, are you still there? No? You still there, Kate? Is that okay? Should we go to you, Tracey, first?
I will give it a try. So I know that there are certainly solutions that urban areas should be taking to cool the air temperature, and lots of efforts around planting trees, of course. But the other thing that I think we really ought to focus on as well is passive cooling. And this is a tool that we would say can achieve not just sustainable cooling for all, but Sustainable Development Goal 7 more holistically. If you can equip a house or a building with passive cooling and reduce the indoor temperature, even 3 degrees, that's less electricity needed, makes it easier to meet the needs of a family, for powering a fan, for example. It also increases productivity for a business. So the simple act, for example, of painting a roof white can cool a home by about 2 or 3 degrees or more. And that's saving energy that would be needed for cooling. And that's something, again, that we look at as supporting equitable access to electricity. We've seen some demonstrated results through the Million Cool Roofs Challenge. One example is in Senegal, one team achieved a 5-degree indoor temperature drop after a cool roof was applied. In Indonesia, at a factory, the indoor temperature dropped by 11 degrees this was on a 41-degree day. And this was an enormous impact for the workers, for their health, for their productivity. But of course, that also means less electricity needed. It means fewer carbon emissions. It means enabling an easier clean energy transition and supporting net zero. But again, this is something that's really important for productive economies. So, not exactly answering your question, but shifting it to a little bit. But passive cooling is something that I think certainly needs a whole lot more of attention. Much lower cost way of addressing some of the issues as well.
Kate, are you back? Can you hear us, Kate? I think we might have lost Kate. We can see you, but we obviously you can't see us.
I don't know if you can hear me.
I can see you and hear you. Can you hear us?
But I can't hear you. I'm really sorry. So I lost my connection again. The internet in my building seems to be very unstable today, but I'm afraid I can't hear anything.
Oh dear. I think what we'll do is we'll try and reconnect Kate. Stay with us one moment. While we do that, Tracey, could I get you your thoughts on from the work in your organisation? What do you see as the biggest gaps in taking the cooling for sustainable development and climate change agenda forward, and who can best fill these gaps?
So I think we see some important gaps in the agricultural and the medical cold chains. These are really critical areas in the deliberation of commitments and the development of cooling strategies. We need definitely more collaboration with the health and agricultural sectors in order to see these results in these areas. And this is cross-sectoral. So we, I think, tend to focus on those working in energy, but we need to also focus on those working in the health and the agricultural sectors, and really bring people together to focus on these issues. There's been a considerable focus on urban cooling as opposed to access in rural settings. So cities make up 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions, and grounding cooling work and climate change mitigation has led to what we've seen as more resourcing for urban challenges, but in the rural settings, we're not seeing that same focus. So we really, I think, need to break this cycle. We need to focus on the urban and the rural, and a key component of that lies in delivering more technological innovation that's really suited to the needs of the rural populations, particularly in poor settings. I think Kate already touched on innovation and technology innovation being a key thing that they're focused on. So that's really, really important. The SEED initiative, I think, has also been really critical in doing that, at looking at motors, for example, as motors is something that people don't think about, but it's something that is in so many different products, and that's something that really can be applied in rural populations in poor settings with some of the agricultural equipment, for example, and that can really impact the affordability for those populations as well. Financial innovation, business models that can make these solutions available is really critically important. Access to credit, pay-go options is something that has really taken off over the last few years, and very, very important for consumers. The cooling as a service initiative is another one that's really demonstrated some potential there, but we really need to show more progress with business models such as these in rural areas.
Thank you. Now you're back, Kate. Can you hear us?
Yes. Sorry about that.
Right. I think we've got time for one very final quick question. So if you if you could have, sorry, let me rephrase that. If you could have there be one shift in the cooling landscape in the next year, what would it be and why? And I'll go to you, Kate.
Wow. I mean, I think we kind of just covered it in the previous question, where at least I could hear what was saying, which was about actually people talking about this and recognizing it as this really integral and integrated challenge that we need to come together to address for climate, for development, for SDG 7, for reducing emissions, for making sure that actually we are improving the health and the livelihoods of individuals, but also actually improving kind of growth at that community and city level as well. So for me, it's kind of seeing it as that bigger challenge. This isn't just about kind of air conditioning units. That's a really important part of this, and it's not just seeing it about sort of a technical solution or something that someone else needs to do in another corner, but seeing it at the heart of those food systems, of the health systems, of our development systems as well. And I think that's where all of those solutions will come together. And Tracey was talking about finance. Actually, if the finance is going to flow, it's because it's part of a bigger picture, and people kind of can see that, not just can see the benefits behind all of this as well. Thinking of cooling as a service as well, I think, is going to be absolutely critical. So seeing this as a systemic challenge that we need to come together to address. So I think that would be my approach to this and what I would want to see.
Tracey, do you want to answer that in a few sentences?
More energy compacts. I'll say more energy compacts, but also national action cooling plans, I think, are critically important. Those can be embedded in the energy compacts, but cooling action plans. And I think if they're effective, it's bringing together multiple ministries across governments to really look at things beyond energy, looking at the health and agricultural side of things as well.
Thank you. I think we're just about to approach 3 o'clock, so I think we're going to leave it there for the questions. I'm sure everyone would like to join me in a virtual round of applause for you both. Thank you very much for joining us and for your time and for your really great answers and comments about calling for climate action. Just like to do a few thank yous as well. Thank you to my team, the Future of Cooling team, for a great series over the last 7 weeks, and also to our colleagues at E3G who are helping us with writing some policy briefs that are coming out of these webinars. I hope you've all enjoyed the webinar today and the previous ones, and I wish you all a very, very good day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tracey. Thank you, Kate. Goodbye.